thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. This is Up for a Chat with Cindy O'Meara, Karen Smith, and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Karen Smith.
I'm Kim Morrison.
And I'm Cindy O'Meara.
And oh my stars, we have a very spunky guest on with us today. We are very excited because just reading through the backstory of our amazing guest today, Darryl Edwards. He is a, what would you call him? He's like a fitness coach and a fitness trainer, but I'm reading his backstory here, and Darryl comes from an investment banking background where he was kind of chained to his seat, and it spurred Darryl on to transform his own health and his own well-being. And we're going to kind of go through his background as to how he's actually gotten to today. But one of the things that I'm just so excited about talking to Darryl about is what he's developed as a result of his own personal experiences, which again is one of my favorite ways that people move through this beautiful experience called life, is where our own personal experiences drive our offering to the world. And Darryl has created a methodology called Primal Play. Now, ladies, sit back because this is going to be a fabulous podcast, and Kimmy is already in fine form based on our conversation prior to the opening. But we are so excited to have you on the show and to really explore more about what Primal Play is and animal moves. Oh, it's all going to get hot and heavy from here. I love it. Welcome to the show, Darryl.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Thank you so much.
Darryl, just before we get into this, I just want to, there was no pre-warning. There was no kind of, did you actually know what you were getting into when you had the three of us inquire about interviewing you? I mean, did you really know what you were up for?
I had no idea, but given that I did spend almost 2 years living in Australia, so that's probably enough forewarning.
Exactly.
I've spent some time with you, Aussies. I know what you're like.
You've met Kimmy's kind before.
Yes, for sure.
Even though she is a Kiwi.
Oh, she is? Oh,
yes.
Okay, so has she acclimatized yet to Australia?
I'm not sure I ever will, Darryl, because I still get confused with the word sex and sex, and so sometimes apparently I get misinterpreted and different things occur that I shouldn't be inquiring. But speaking of all things sexual, sensual and everything else, you're very hot, Darryl. I mean, I just have to put it out there. It's there. You're very hot. You're gorgeous. You have the most amazing voice. You've got an incredible body. And I would just love to know how we got to be so privileged to have you on the show. What led you to where you are today? Could you give us a little bit about your history and how you got to being here?
Yeah. So, firstly, thank you once again for a great introduction. I don't know who you know. I was wondering who you were talking about then, but in all seriousness, I got into this lifestyle about 15 years ago. I used to work within investment banking, within technology, and it was a very lucrative job, but extremely demanding. And I was working up to an average probably 15 hours a day, every single day of the week. And I had responsibility for a project that ran across the entire world. So London-based, but the systems are running in New York, in Hong Kong, and Sydney. And so I'd be kind of point person for any issues that occurred at any time of the day. So you can imagine sort of finishing work at 7 in the evening. I'd get home. I may get a call a couple of hours later, and I may continue working until the early hours. Get to bed at 1, 2 in the morning. I may get another call at 5, and then I may be asked why I'm not in the office at 6:30, even though I've been up half the night. So that was the environment that I was in. very sedentary, not eating well, highly stressed. And one year I had an annual health check, and my doctor told me I was pre-diabetic. I had chronic hypertension, high blood pressure. I had a really poor lipid profile. So, really bad cholesterol profile, high elevated triglycerides. And the solution by my doc was, don't worry, Mr. Edwards, you can take some statins for your elevated risk of heart disease, cardiovascular disease. We can give you some beta blockers for your blood pressure. We can give you some metformin to control your blood sugars. And as well as that, I was suffering from a lot of pain because I had regular low back pain. So I had chronic low back pain. And I was also wearing knee supports as well. So I'd often wear a back brace, and I was also wearing knee supports. So when my doctor presented this cocktail of meds, my main concern was the fact that what the side effects would be. So I was like, okay, these meds are likely to help, but what are the side effects? And I'm really concerned about those. And that concern made me reject taking the meds and to seek out if lifestyle could be useful. And within about a few short weeks, actually, there was a significant difference in my health profile. So one of the things I was aware about back then was that exercise would be beneficial for blood pressure. So that's all I knew about any lifestyle intervention, was just that fact. And so within a few weeks of me exercising, my blood pressure came down and was optimized. And so I was like, okay, wow, well, this is good intervention. What else can I do? So that led me to think about other lifestyle changes, like improving my diet. I was like, okay, if I'm exercising, maybe I need to start thinking about the food I should be eating to support that. So I had a book by Lauren Cordain, which I call a shelf help book. It was on my shelf for ages, and I hadn't really paid much attention to it. But this book, called The Paleo Diet, spoke about eating foods that are more akin to our nature, to our ancestry. And that's what led me down the path of improving my diet and thinking much more about living a more natural lifestyle. And in terms of the blood tests, my health markers improved significantly. So I was no longer pre-diabetic. I was no longer suffering from chronic pain. And it was a miraculous recovery within a few short months. So I didn't have to take any medication. And my doctor was quite fascinated at what I'd done. And so that led me on to thinking about what the underlying mechanisms. Why has this lifestyle change been so successful? And how can I actually learn more about this so I can teach others how to do the same? So that's, I suppose, a summary as to where I started, and 15 years on, where I'm at now, in terms of developing the Primal Play methodology and teaching people how to live and integrate this lifestyle into however they live. So how do we take the best of the past in terms of modeling our ancestors into the 21st century?
Darryl, I can't even imagine, because I've met you and I've been in your community in London and watched what you do, and I can't even imagine you being boxed up in the financial world. I was a bit of a geek, to be honest. So when I was a geek, and I mean, imagine just being cooped up, surrounded by computer screens, and lunch would be somebody bring a sandwich to your desk. You'd order someone to get you a sandwich, and because you wouldn't want to leave your desk. I mean, even going to the toilet was a mission, because you'd be like, I can't. If I step away, something might happen. I felt so important to the operation of the bank. The systems I was working on were making generating so much revenue. So you felt there was a high level of self-importance, and the bank, they made you would definitely sacrifice your pound of flesh. That's for sure. Mm.
They worked you really hard. So I suffered the consequences. And as when you're told at a relatively young age that you're suffering with all of these issues, which you would I would have associated with somebody far older, I was like, what the heck is going on? And my doctor said, well, you've got some issues, with your your immediate family in relation to high blood pressure and heart disease and the like. So it's genetic. There's not really much you can do about it. You're just unfortunate to have to suffer it early on. And now, of course, I know that that wasn't the case, that those issues weren't predominantly genetic. They were epigenetic. They were based on how I was living my life. And so even staying within the banking environment for several years after that, I was able to have healthy annual health checks, even though I was still living within that environment. And I think that was also important as well. I didn't just exit and decide to become a monk, and live a perfect lifestyle. Yeah. I was still able to have my career within banking, but change my diet, change my approach to movement, think about other lifestyle factors that were important. And that transition, in terms of learning more about what I wanted to do to improve my own health, meant that I had to support that by learning more about it. So I didn't want to advise people without actually having an understanding of nutrition. Say, why are you eating this? I don't really know. It just works for me. Wasn't good enough. People wanted to know, well, why? Tell us about the science. Tell us about why you believe this is beneficial. So, I became a nutritional therapist. I started, becoming more passionate about movement, more so than nutrition. And I recognized that movement actually probably is probably the poor relation to nutrition in the lifestyle sense. Movement tends to be about, oh yeah, it can help you get fit. It's great to be, it will get you healthy, but we don't really understand why. Just do. It's important enough to do. But I wanted to know, well, what are the underlying mechanisms that make movement life enhancing? How does it change our physiology to ensure that it supports healthy lifestyle practices? Why? What does it do? So that's the kind of area of research I got into. And that's what I speak about in my work, providing that sort of evidence base and how there's a synergy between good food and real food and movement. So if you can start speaking about movement in the sense that it's like good nutrition, there is a way of ensuring you have the right nutrients from a movement perspective. The type of movements you do all have a different benefit. So it's almost like saying, like an avocado, for example, there's no way, even as healthy as an avocado is, you would mandate that just eating avocados all day, every day would be the best way for you to maintain, a well-balanced diet. That wouldn't be the case. We recognize that we need a great array of micronutrients and vitamins and minerals that come from a wide array of sources. And it's similar with movement. We can't just do cardio. We can't just do resistance training. We can't just work at the same intensity. There's a lot that comes from movement, which is extremely important both for the mind and the body. So it's been an interesting journey from 15 plus years ago to where I am now. And I feel highly privileged to be able to share what only happened to me, but also what people can do practically to inform themselves about movement and the powers of movement and why movement is medicine.
Yeah. In your book, Animal Moves, the front cover is you out in nature. And what has happened, like in the nutrition world, I think there's a real awakening about we've got to go real foods, whole foods, organic. We have to start going that way. But with the movement world, I don't think we've progressed past being in a gym, lifting weights, and like being under blue lights. And we were basically talking about a comment that I had seen on social media, which said a workout that is done under blue light or EMF is a workout that does not work out for our mitochondria as nature intended it. And food is going back to the historical perspective of how did we eat then? And I feel like you're doing that for movement. I think you're in the forerunner of this. You are in the leading edge. You're the first one I ever came across. Even though I love it, I go, Karen, Kim and I, we we go 2 weeks and go hiking, or, you know, we've been to Andes, we've done New Zealand, we're about to do Tasmania. So we know how good it makes us feel. But can you give us that why we should do what you're talking about, and, you know, the historical perspective of what it is, which is animal moves. They are animal moves. They're not these moves that we wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, well, we thinking about our evolution, our ancestry. You know, we evolved in nature, so the foods that we ate, became us, affected our DNA, led to our survival, brought us to the present day. And if we deviate from nature's provision in terms of food, that leads to ill health. You know, so we know food is medicine. And if we choose the right foods, we're more likely to be healthy. And it's exactly the same in relation to movement, but not only doing movement, but the environment that you do it in. So there are far more benefits. If I run indoors on a treadmill, and I run outdoors, there are significant differences between the two. So even running at exactly the same speed, getting the same, running at the same pace, the same speed for 30 minutes, say, on a treadmill, doing exactly the same outdoors, there are significantly more benefits, even from the improvements in fitness being outside. So just talking about the obvious. So one, the difference in terrain being outdoors as opposed to on a treadmill. So that has a significant difference to how it affects your physiologically. So wind resistance. So just running against the wind increases the amount of oxygen intake. The wind resistance means you're getting a greater impact on your cardiovascular system just because of that fact. Third, if you're running, say, in the summer, if you're getting access to vitamin D, that's also a benefit which you're not going to be getting if you're indoors. So that has incredible amounts of benefit on your immune system, for example, immunoregulation. And finally, which is something people may not be aware of, we've been termed as biophilic creatures. So Ed Wilson wrote a book, and he discussed something called biophilia, which is humans' innate ability to love nature. You know, this attraction to the natural environment. And so there's lots of research about, the color green in nature. So if you just look at trees in nature, look at the color green in nature, you actually have a stress reduction response. It lowers your blood pressure. It boosts or improves your immune system, the immune system regulation. So there's lots of research actually emerging about being within a natural environment. So it's far more potent than just the fact that you're avoiding, a natural light. It's more important than just the fact, what's happening in terms of kind of your circadian rhythms. Just being outside is an antidote to a lot of the ailments that we suffer from. So I wouldn't want to discourage anyone from moving, because I believe being sedentary is the worst possible state. You know what I mean? So if somebody's like, oh, I can't exercise outside, I can only be indoors, so I'm not going to exercise, is not what I would suggest. I would say just move in the first place, and then the ideal environment would be for us to move outdoors. It's far more interesting, it's a much more varied environment, and it's more healthful. So yes, so it's extremely important for us to access nature when we can. We feel better. As you say, going hiking, we're attracted to a natural environment. And so I live in a big city, but fortunately have access to, London is one of the kind of greenest cities in the world in terms of our access to parks. It's almost 50% of London green spaces. So I have lots of parks nearby, which fortunately aren't manicured. So they're quite, and there's rocks and there's kind of, logs everywhere, and you almost feel as if you're in the middle of the country. So I spend most of my movement time in that environment. And yeah, it's fantastic.
Darryl, would you say then, from a point of view of exercise or movement, functional movement, Do you think, I'd just love your opinion, what do you think is more important, nutrition or movement?
Well, well, yeah. So, do you know what? I would say movement is more important, and it is quite controversial because the reason I would say this is purely from a common sense point of view, and if we are referencing our evolutionary heritage, if we are using our ancestry as a reference, then the ability for humans to access nourishing foods was based on our ability to move. So we weren't, our environments weren't rich with food sources within a few centimeters from our our habitat. We had to walk significant distances. We had to burn a significant amount of calories to hunt and gather foods and scavenge foods. That's what we had to do. So the priority for us as a species was our ability to move, to be able to access, the best of our environment. And of course, now arguably we exploit the environment significantly. But in terms of our natural state, our ability to move as generalists, our ability to be nomadic, meant we were able to access resources, food resources it's helpful. So I think now in the 21st century, where movement has been engineered out of our environment, convenience means we don't even have to walk. I could stay stay on my sofa all day, be entertained, communicate with people across the world like yourselves, have relationships, order food, get food delivered. I mean, pretty much I can work sitting on my sofa. So in many respects in the 21st century, we don't have to move to survive. But there was a point in time in human history where without movement, we weren't able to survive. So I would say movement is more important, or it's equally as important as food. And I would arguably say it's more important, because if you can't move, we can't access food. Well, if you're thrown onto a desert island, and you can't move, then you're going to perish very, very quickly.
My grandma always said, Darryl, that you should always squat. Her words were always, just do your squats every day. And at one point I remember saying to her, why are you so big on squats? And she said, because the day you need help going to the toilet is a sad day indeed. And I've never forgotten it around just squatting, just for that basic functional activity that we do on a daily basis. And I don't know if you know a man called Marcus Pierce, Darryl, but he's one of our close friends who does a lot of podcasting. He lives by what he calls the exceptional life blueprint. And in fact, he thinks number one most important thing is life purpose, having a purpose in life. Number two is exercise and movement. Number three is your social life. And number four is nutrition. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, that at least when we're moving, we can create or hunt or find or make good food. And therefore, yes. I really love what you're saying. And I mean, I know we've got Cindy, who's obviously very big with food, and everything is around food for her. But I'm sure she would agree. She would rather be able to move to get food than have to have food brought to her.
Yes, and if you think about think about this. Think about the process of conception, right? So reproduction. Movement is extremely important, right? And highly pleasurable.
Darryl, now that you've brought that,
I knew this was going to happen.
Right? Yes. Right? Think about the process of birthing. We know it's more beneficial for a baby to go, down the birth canal and to pick up all that beneficial bacteria than it is to have a cesarean section, for example, right? So that process of movement and striving and fighting for both from the female perspective and the child, it's movement is extremely important, and it's vital for life. And even once the baby's born, right, even though baby has limited ability in terms of, movement from a fully fledged adult's point of view, the process of feeding, movements required, right? So, I mean, it's all very subtle, but extremely important, extremely vital for life. It's fundamental for life, the feeding process. So for me, I tend to look at this from what's extremely obvious and something that we probably dismiss as not being that important. It just happens, but it's happened for a reason. It's happened because nature has dictated this is the way, we survive. This has led to our survival. So yeah, movement is extremely important, and that's not pushing out any other lifestyle intervention as not being important, because they all obviously are. But even thinking about our sense of purpose, again, if you are talking about a survival point of view, our sense of purpose would be to build shelter, to protect our family, to be able to access food and resources. That's the kind of bottom of the hierarchy of needs, right? That we have to satisfy our survival instincts. Then you can start focusing on what else gives us joy and purpose. So when you think about movement in that sense, you are then talking about, say, recreational activities like dancing and playing. Why did humans, why do all mammals actually decide to take part in activities which aren't just around getting food and reproduction, and building shelter and the like? We take part in lots of other recreational activities that are fun in relation to movement. So movement is just really pivotal to our DNA. And that's not even discussing a lot of the science around movement as well. So one thing I definitely want to mention around the science is the gut microbiome. So there's interesting research that the more aerobically fit you are based on your VO2 max, which is a marker of kind of cardiovascular fitness, a set of rugby players were in a study. So they were controlled for diet, they're controlled for other lifestyle, for age, for everything else you can think of within a rugby team. And they found that the fittest rugby players had a 20% increase in volume and diversity of health promoting bacteria. And that was based on their VO2 max. So even controlled for diet, there were improvements over and above that based on the amount of movement they were undertaking, which is quite fascinating. So even for those who are thinking about enriching their gut flora, movement also plays a part.
Do you think that the rugby players being outside for most of the time,
Yes.
In Australia, they're always outside, they're on the grass, they're everywhere. Do you think that has a big thing to do with it as well with their microbiome?
For sure, because obviously you're going to be accessing soil-based organisms for one, so that plays a part. But the fascinating thing is that they all had this. The control group being rugby players eliminates the just being outside.
Yeah, true.
Point. Right. So they actually looked at rugby players and non-rugby players initially, and the suggestion was, well, okay, look, their nutrition is going to be better. Right, because they're going to be focusing on obviously good food because they want to perform well, right? They're also outdoors, which means, and they're outdoors in the dirt oftentimes, which means they're going to be accessing soil-based organisms. So that's obviously the reason why. So that's when they actually created this a rugby player only study. So then they eliminated the differences based on environments because they were all outdoors. They were all training pretty much the same.
Yeah,
so these are professional rugby players, but even within a rugby team, there are different demands depending on your position. So there are some rugby players that are far fitter, they're more active within that environment than others within that team. And so this VO2 max, which is your ability to process oxygen, that's what the marker is. Your aerobic capacity has a correlation with more diversity of of health promoting bacteria. So it's very fascinating. And I mean, I kind of geek out on this, and it's useful to discuss this, because for someone who's thinking, okay, it's just about kimchi and kombucha and probiotics, it's like, well, hold on a second. Actually, just going outside, playing in the dirt, as a kid is a really important part of you enriching your gut flora. Do you know what I mean? Us not being so obsessed with hygiene is also important. But going outdoors and improving your level of fitness, cardiovascular fitness, is also important. So, yeah.
Now, what you've developed is something called Primal Play, and I was very fortunate to be at Dr. Terry Wall's conference, not this year, but the year before, and I noticed you were there this year as well, Darryl. And we got to have a session. Whoever was attending got to have a session, so I came and had a session with you. Can you explain what is Primal Play all about? Like, what do you base it on? Yeah, and we did it inside because, was it cold? No, it was the summer, wasn't it? So it wasn't cold, but we did do it inside. Yeah.
We did it indoors, yeah. So, I mean, Primal Play is really a way to inspire children of all ages. So, from 4 to 94 to have fun with movement. So we can all pretty much remember the experience of movement as children when it was all about joy. So we didn't exercise. Your parents didn't say to you, go outside and exercise. You went outside to play, right? That's what you did. You weren't thinking about sets and reps and how far can we run? And, should we do our HIIT play today? Or resistance training by piggyback carrying. That's not how we thought about movement. The driver was having fun. If it was enjoyable, let's do it. If there's an element of risk, let's try it out, right? That's how we approach movement as kids. And so I wanted to maintain the inner child that I have and think about how I can motivate myself to have a better love affair with movement. Because to be honest, most people hate exercise. It's not, our DNA shirks from physical activity, right? We would rather be sat and fed grapes than to move, right? The reason we do it is because we have to. The reason we do it is because we know there's a benefit in doing so. But we're designed to conserve energy because we don't necessarily know where our next meal is going to come from, right? So we make really good choices about movement. And part of that means now that we have devices doing lots of the work for us and making life more convenient for us, we take that option. So exercise is a modern construct developed because we're less active than we once were. But it means that it's really difficult to get to grips with. So that was the problem that I tried to solve. Now, why do people join gyms in early January, New Year's resolutions, but by the end of January, most people quit? Why do gyms thrive in the fact that even though they may have 1,000 members, they rely on the fact only 100 of those members will attend regularly? Why is that the case? Why do people sign up to do charity runs, and that's the only way they can motivate themselves to do it, because they're raising money for charity? Why is that the case? And I just feel most of the time it's because exercise is deemed as being punishing and a chore, and is not necessarily enjoyable. So that's what Primal Play is about, making sure we have natural, functional, primal, instinctive movement, but using play as a vehicle to make it more enjoyable. So I take that recipe of being a kid, some of the childhood games that we would play, and make them something that's accessible to all. So I'm sure, as you remember, Cindy, there were people at Terry Wall's conference, with different states of mobility. Some in wheelchairs, some with walking sticks, and they were still able to play these games that I've adapted to make sure they're accessible to all. And they're having a smile on their face, and they're all working, to their ability, but having fun with movement. So that was the problem that I wanted to, the puzzle that I tried to solve. And I believe it's one of the solutions to ensure more of us can start having a better love affair with movement. Because to be honest, even for myself, who's passionate, I tried to be passionate about exercise, and I was fooling myself. I was kidding myself. I was beating up myself in the gym. I was highly competitive, which I felt was the way that I could maintain that sustainable practice with exercise. But I was bored silly oftentimes. And I was like clock watching, going, when is this session going to end? Because I know it's good for me, but oh my goodness, I can't wait for this to finish. Now I fall in love with movement again. Now I seek out opportunities to have fun with movement. So if I go to my local park, there is no way I could just run for 5 kilometers round and round, like thinking, okay, I've achieved something. If I was going to go for a run, I'd have to interact with my environment. I have to climb a tree. I'd have to crawl on the ground. If I see a friend, I've got to piggyback carry them and go, play tag or that's now how I think about movement, not the way of just this kind of sequential rhythmic patterns of movement, which is what exercise is. So I know it's a fairly elaborate explanation as to how I developed Primal Play. But if we are really going to want to tackle this problem of a sedentary lifestyle, people aren't using the stairs. The amount of times, look at our environment around us. Take a look at the next time you see some stairs and there's an escalator next to it. How many people take the escalator? Even if it's only 10, 15 meters, flights, a few flights of stairs, people don't want to walk. Oftentimes they'll take the elevator, they'll take a lift, they'll take a car for 5-10 minute journey rather than walking. That's what the majority of people would do, even if they have the ability to do so. So anyway, that's the problem we need to solve. How do we encourage people to be more active, to have more fun doing so, and to have a lifelong love affair with movement, with physical activity?
And I think that's a really big call, because I'm just sitting here listening to everything that you're saying and, totally in awe. And what's really, really interesting, I come from a similar background to yourself, where I was chained to the desk, and the company that I worked for took their pound of flesh and they owned me for my pay. So my priority was my career. My priority was building my knowledge base so that I could be of value in my working environment. So it wasn't about health and well-being for me. It was about getting up the earliest, being the first one in and the last one to leave, and, all of that sort of stuff. But what I'm finding really interesting now that I'm in a different phase of my life, what I'm finding very interesting is all of the different solutions that are popping up to help people be more functional in their movement. I still don't feel for myself that anybody has got it quite right, which is why I'm so interested to talk to you on today's podcast. Because I look at all the different gyms, and yes, you go to the gym and it's boring as all get up and get out of here. It's excruciating. And then I look at other solutions like, and I go to F45 and, most of the time I love it. But there's still that methodology that you have to whip yourself into submission. And as a woman, and I'm in my mid-40s, there are some days I refuse to beat myself. I refuse to whip myself. And there are days where all I want to do is yoga, and there are days where I don't want to do a damn thing.
Yes.
And if I'm to listen to society, I'm lazy, or I'm not doing all of the things that I should be doing, yet I'm so tired from the inside out that if I was to do anything, all I'd be doing is sending myself into, I'd give myself the flu because I'd wear myself out, or I'd give myself something else because my body would be crying for rest.
Yes.
Can you talk through that balance that I'm finding so many well, obviously I speak to women, so I'm finding so many women who feel the same way, but there isn't a solution that encompasses everything. You're either just doing yoga, or you're just bashing yourself up, or you're trying to have a balance of both, but then your membership to both of those lands up being $5,000 for the year. So
yeah. So, I mean, okay. So in my book, and in my approach in general, as I said earlier, that if we think about movement as being a well-balanced diet, Okay. So whatever your kind of get well, eat well plate is, whatever that is for you. So I know we're pretty much on the same page there in terms of what we deem to be real food and what we avoid and what we cherish from food. We should also have the same approach to movement. So for example, if I only have yoga on my plate, if I only have this very low intensity, let's focus on being in this blissful, mindful place, listening to Enya in a chill out space, for example, that's not going to give us everything we need for movement. In exactly the same way, if I'm just doing very, very high intensity activity as my diet, my movement diet, that also isn't going to give me everything that I need. So we do need some lower intensity work, which is more mindful. We also need higher intensity, vigorous activity, which is also extremely important. We also need things that fill up the rest of the plate coming from movement. So my approach is to ensure that you just don't focus on one thing, that you move in 3 dimensions, that you move not only by yourself, but with a partner, with a group, that you interact with them, that you interact with your environment, that you're making sure you're getting access to nature, that you're filling in the gaps and thinking about what you want from function and longevity. So for me now, I'm thinking far less about maintaining 8-pack abs or whatever. And I'm thinking far more about, I want to be able to get out of my chair in the next decade or 2 or 3 or 4. That's what I want from movement. I want to maintain independence. I want to be able to play with my grandkids and great grandkids. That's what I want from movement. So once you start thinking about health and longevity with movement, rather than thinking about, I want to look good on the beach this summer, then you're in a far better place. And so I feel most conventional fitness focuses on very short-term gains. You look at fitness magazines, what are they bombarded with as their headlines? Get beach body ready in 28 days, drop 2 dress sizes, that or whatever, that's what it is. Get bigger biceps, sun's out, guns out, no pain, no gain. These are the messages that we see and bombarded with all of the time. And so if you go to a gym and I say to you, look at all the equipment that I have, look at all the classes I have, look at the fluffy towels I have, and the TV screens that you can watch so you're not bored when you're running on a treadmill, and the steam room and the sauna, and you can get a spa treatment afterwards. I've literally got to sell you all of this additional stuff just to get you inside my gym. Whereas actually you don't need a gym to move. You can do it wherever you are. I mean, that's the great thing about movement, right? You can do it wherever you are. And that's why, again, I don't want to emphasize that you have to do it outside. I move a lot in my living space. If I'm watching TV, I will squat, I'll crawl around, I'll make sure my remote is nowhere near me. So I'll bear crawl across the room to pick up my remote. I crawl around the floor, I roll off the sofa. I mean, I literally am a big kid. And I have this passion and love and joy for movement, which means I don't think about 30 minutes every day of exercise. I just think about, how do I break up sedentary time? I've been sitting reading a book for a while. You know what? I need to move. Let me just get a couple of minutes of movement. Then I'll come back to reading my book. Or why don't I move and read my book? Why don't I do that too? So yeah, I think that's a better approach. Thinking about movement snacks, thinking about movement breaks, where you're breaking up sedentary activity. And then by the end of your day, you will end up doing 30 minutes, an hour and a half of movement, which is going to be different intensities, which is going to be very interesting, which isn't going to be just beating yourself up. You're going to be taking yourself through an interesting journey every single day. So my programs, like the Animal Move program, I try to create some structure around changing intensities, changing volumes and duration. So you're not beating up yourself every day. You have some low intensity days. You have some days where you're focusing on posture and kind of flow based movements. But some days when you are pushing yourselves, because, to be honest, a lot of human beings who tell me they do too much in terms of physical activity, maybe they're not doing too much in terms of physical activity. Maybe they're just doing too much of other stuff. So they've got a really highly stressful, chronically stressful job. They've got a demanding home life. They want to be Superman or Superwoman, and then they decide to beat themselves up in the gym, and that's what's tipping them over the edge. It's everything else that they're doing. Whereas if you are seeking out some stress management practices, and if you're making sure that you're having some tender moments in your relationship, and avoiding toxicity in all areas of your life, then you can take part in very demanding physical activities, and it's not going to be detrimental to your health. Do you see what I mean? So I think it's all about balance, but you don't need to be say doing yoga to be mindful. I'll give you an example. If the three of you went outside now and played tag, right? The game of tag or catch or it, whatever you call Tiggy, I think you guys call it, right, in Oz. But whatever you guys call that game when you were kids, if you went out to play Tiggy now as adults, you'd be completely in the moment. Completely and utterly in the moment. Having fun, laughing, playing a game that you played as kids, right? Even though it'd be very physically vigorous activity, right? You'd be getting out of breath within seconds, right? You'd be moving in ways that you haven't done for some time. So even though you're in this state of very stressful physical activity, it's very joyful. It's very helpful to be in. So the solution isn't necessarily avoiding intense physical activity. It's just making sure that you're getting the right health benefits from doing so. And kids won't play tag forever, right? They'll know when it's time to stop because they get out of breath. They're like, you know what? Yeah, let's play another game, right? Kids do this naturally. They'll know how to vary intensity. They'll know how to make sure that they maintain an interest. They'll know when to stop because their body will say, you know what? Yeah, we need a breather. Then they'll come back in and play again. So they naturally take part in interval training. So as I said right from the beginning, our reference point should be nature. Our reference point should be evolution. And if we use these cues, we'll have a healthier relationship with physical activity, and we won't suffer from the side effects. We don't do enough. Even those who say that they do, in comparison to hunter-gatherer populations, we're doing nowhere near as much movement as we should be doing. Definitely not of the right types too.
Do you know what I love, Darryl, is that I think you've spoken to our audience with regards to the gym, the repetitions. Yes. When can I get out of here? How fast can I be out of here? I really am not enjoying this. I think that you've spoken to them. And I've also believed that you've created an amazing awareness. So, that stair versus the escalator or the elevator thing.
Yes.
I don't think they're thinking, because I go to the airport a lot, and right beside the escalator is the stairs, and nobody takes them. I do. I just want you to know, you taught me that. I take. And whenever I find stairs, I've got to take them, and then I feel guilty about using the electricity on the escalator, so I go into that mode too. But I love that what you've done is that you have, first of all, given us an excuse to get out of the gym because
save some money.
Yeah, save a lot of money. I'm like you. I'm not a gym lover. 30 years ago, I came to Queensland after living in a very cold, like London type of climate. I came to Queensland and I never set foot in a gym again because, number one, they were hot and smelly. Number two, they were boring. And I used our beaches, like we live on the beach. So I started to use it on the beach. So thank you for that. I feel better because every morning I get on my bike and I ride past F45. Yes, I ride past you, Karen. I ride past F45 and I all see them in there doing their thing. And I just kind of go, I haven't paid a cent for my bike. I inherited the bike from my sister 12 years ago, so I haven't paid a cent for my bike. And then I get down to the beach and, I ground myself with no shoes on, and then I go for a swim. And I'm a little bit like, sometimes I really feel like swimming hard, and other times I just want to play. So I listen to my body, and I think you give us permission to listen to our bodies. But what you taught me this time is the remote. The remote.
Yes. The remote's a good one. And you know, and to be honest, I think another thing I definitely want to stress is that, again, I don't want to kind of diss the gym experience. Yeah. Because for some of those people, it is the only environment that they have. You know, you live in a cold climate. It may be so harsh being outdoors in winter. Thank goodness there are gyms available. But if I'm trying to make movement more accessible for people, then they need to be aware that they can do it anywhere.
Yes.
So if you've got a beautiful environment, I mean, I've seen people in gyms looking out at the beach and the ocean, you know, on a treadmill, and I'm like, why would you do that? Why there, you know, when I used to live in Bondi, for example, you know, why are there gyms 2 minutes away from Bondi Beach with treadmills in? Like, I don't understand. If there's stuff that you can't replicate outdoors, but you can only do it in a gym, arguably that may be a good idea. But if you can do that stuff outdoors, why don't you do it? You know, if you can carry your bags up the stairs and give yourself a bit of a workout in doing so, why don't you do that? You're there. You're already there, right? It's only going to be a couple of minutes for you to take the stairs. Why not do that? Why not get out of breath on a regular basis, which isn't just about you getting fit, right? Or, you know, or being in the gym. So, yeah, so I think you're in a wonderful position. You're in a great environment, but there are so many people, Cindy, who wouldn't do what you're doing, who live in that beautiful environment, who just go, wow, look at the view. Isn't it great that I live here? But I'm not going to make the best of the environment that I'm in. I live in London, 4 seasons, right? Not the harshest of winters, but still can be pretty brutal. But I don't want to be fit and capable only in the summer. So I do go outdoors in the winter. I do go outdoors when it's raining. My clients and I are out when the snow's out. And it's so much fun. We build huge snowballs. You know, we're like lifting and carrying snowballs. We're deadlifting snowballs. We're pushing them overhead. We're like throwing snowballs at each other. I mean, in my opinion, you know, as a kid as well, growing up in this climate, we had so much fun in the winter. We didn't stop playing because it was cold outside. So there's part of us which needs to toughen up, actually. There's part of us which needs to seek out discomfort, because discomfort is what strengthens us. And that's important for movement as well. Don't just seek out stuff which is always comfortable, because that's what led us to only ever taking the elevator.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, it's comfortable. Oh, I don't even need to walk. I can get to wherever I need to. Isn't this great? Yeah, it is great. It feels great, which is why we do it. So we have to take the inconvenient option sometimes and go, you know what? I don't really want to take the stairs because I know it's going to take a bit of effort take a bit out of me, but actually it's better for me to do so. So I always seek out those opportunities. I'm like, I almost never ever take the lift. And I'm talking even when I was staying in a hotel once and I was on a 25th floor. And I remember saying to myself, why did I decide to never ever take the lift?
I'm dead.
Yeah. But I was like, you know what? I am not going to take, my heavy bags, right? I was like, I'm going to try it out. And if I only get to the 10th floor, I'll just get off at the 10th floor and get the lift there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I at least start the process and thinking, let me see how far I can do this. And okay, I got to the 20th floor, 25th floor, whatever it was. And it was a lot of hard work. And I was cursing at the end of it and coughing and spluttering at the end of it. But it felt great to realize that my body can still do this stuff. And this is the problem for many. There is going to become a point in time when you're not going to be able to do stuff you used to be able to do. And a lot of that reason is because you didn't do it when you could. That's the problem. You know what I mean? It's like I don't want to get out of the chair. And there's a point in time when you can't get out of the chair because you weren't working you weren't squatting enough. Do you know what I mean? You weren't supporting your body weight enough. So I don't want to get to that state if at all possible.
I love how you think.
Thank you.
I think your book, and I think we should plug your book. Karen's already downloaded it.
Oh, yes.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I just think people need to get your book here in Australia and learn how you think, because I think that's what it is. Like your thought processes have gotten you to doing Primal Play and now to your book, Animal Moves. So we will make sure that we put on the show notes about your book, Animal Moves, so that everybody knows where they can get it. And I just think all of our listeners should be pulling this down and doing it. Start doing this. And start
yes, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, go along to my website, which is primalplay.com, and there's lots of ideas of how you can create this like a play-based lifestyle. So, you know, being playful is extremely important. And I feel that, as you say, it is a kind of a mindset. So I changed my mindset. My first book, for example, was called Paleo Fitness. And that book was inspired by me thinking about how important is movement for us as humans? How did we evolve with movement? But part of that book was basically telling people you've got to be hardcore about your fitness, right? You know, work hard, play hard, that type of approach. And I recognize that mere mortals, we really struggle with physical activity. You know, we struggle to have a healthy relationship. So Primal Play and my book Animal Moves is much more about catering to the majority of individuals who are thinking, how can I have that love affair? Like, I can see Darryl's really passionate. I can see those people in the gym are really passionate about movement, but I'm not. How can I create that for myself? And this is one way, this is one antidote of ensuring that you can. So trust me when I say that I hate exercise. I actually do. You know, I'm kind of like I feel as if I'm in sedentary anonymous or something like that. You know, I was a sedentary addict for a very long time. I then felt that I cracked it by having this exercise, getting into exercise, but then I became an exercise addict and I wasn't really enjoying it. It was just something to do. And I really enjoyed the end. So I enjoyed the 60 minutes right at the end where I had that endorphin rush and the runner's high, which people tell you about. But think about it. If you've got to do something for an hour or 2 hours before you feel good about it, it's a bit like working, right? If you've got to work and the only time you feel good is at the end of the month when you get the paycheck, that's not the job you want to be doing, right? You want to seek out something which you're more passionate about. And I feel the same way about movement. If I've got to do something for 2 hours and then go, oh, wow, that was great at the end of it, that's not any good. I want to feel great immediately.
I love that, Darryl. I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
And so I think, there you go.
I think our listeners are going to be suitably inspired by what you've shared with us today. We are at the end of our time today, so but I feel like we could keep talking to you because there's still so much more to explore around this. Like, you know, you've totally hit the nail on the head where you said, think about what you want from your body and then exercise based on what you want for your body. I think that is a really big aha moment for a lot of our listeners and for me. Yes. And just to finish us off now on that note, I think is really potent for everybody to start to pay attention to not how good they look in their jeans, because that will come naturally. But that will come naturally.
That'll be a natural side effect. And I just need to interrupt you. I'm going to be really rude, right? I'm just going to say a great start for people is to not think about exercise. Exercise is optional, right? Exercise is something you have to choose to do, but movement is mandatory. And if you think about that, if you think about the fact that I have to move, right? Then you can start making better decisions around movement. Then you can start saying, how can I make the process of movement more fun? Because exercise is, as I say, can be off-putting to many people. So if you're that individual, don't use the word exercise anymore. Just use the word movement, and just think about how you can have a better love affair with movement. That's where you love that. Start. Thank you.
I'm just gutted I didn't get to ask my questions around the release of nitric oxide and oxytocin and all those.
Here we go.
We have to go. We have to go.
We need them back. I want them back.
Oh, we have to have him back.
Yes, because
we can do a part two.
Then we can discuss your 24 hours that need to run, Kimmy. I think we'll get you back, Darryl. Definitely.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been amazing on today's show.
Thank you for the invitation. It was worth getting up early in the morning. So thank you for the boost, the ego boost at least.
You're adorable, and thank you for being so pleasurable to look at. I mean, to listen to. Thank you.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
For all of our listeners who love today's podcast, make sure you go to allthews.facebook.com/up for a chat and post your comments and your questions right there. You can also post your comments and your questions at allthews.thewellnesscouch.com/up for a chat. We are going to make sure that we put all of Darryl's contact details and where you can download that book and grab your own copy of Animal Moves. I just want to say, get your hands on it, get it into your family, and start creating a different conversation around exercise. I bloody love it. Absolutely love it. Join us here next week on Up for a Chat and become part of the ripple effect that's changing the world. And we are going to see you as you move with us at the hike around Mont Blanc. All the w's.karensmith.com/UFC. Up for a Chat. We're going to see you on the hike. See you, everybody. Bye for now.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.